When the lights went out, Masha was just about to stab her fork into the first piece of chicken breast she'd fried for dinner. The sudden blackout froze her in place, fork suspended midair. Then she hissed, very clearly, "Damn it." Of course there was no moon, and the entire apartment plunged into complete, impenetrable darkness. Her windows faced a strip of woods. There weren't any streetlights out there anyway, so... Carefully setting the fork on the table, Masha stood up from the couch and, arms outstretched like a sleepwalker, shuffled toward the kitchen. In the dark, the apartment suddenly felt hostile and strange. She couldn't remember where she'd put the matches, her stove lit with a button, which naturally needed power. Bumping into her hanging shearling coat, she suddenly remembered the lighter in its pocket and let out a relieved breath. It was a tiny flame that would quickly burn her fingers, but a flame all the same. She hurried into the kitchen and turned on the gas on all the burners. The kitchen bloomed with a ghostly, cold light. Sinking into a chair, Masha exhaled again. Now she just needed to find the candles, and that would be that. Nothing to be afraid of. Thank God there were still some left over from New Year's long, twisted, vanilla-scented tapers. But where were they? Hopefully in the kitchen, and if not... Masha could have shoved them anywhere. She rummaged blindly in the drawer with all the miscellaneous household junk and, oh, miracle! There they were, in their proper place, surprisingly. She lit both candles at once, reconsidered a few seconds later, and blew one out better to conserve. Who knew when the power would come back on? She went to the living room, stuck the candle into a candlestick, and set it on the table. It all looked very romantic, she decided. Dinner by candlelight, for one. When the chicken was gone, boredom pricked at her. It was just a faint sting for now, but who knew how long she'd be stuck like this? She took her plate to the kitchen and returned to the living room, sitting down on the couch. What to do? How to pass the time? Reading too dark, and it would ruin her eyes. And there wasn't much to read anyway. She'd been reading on an e-reader for ages, and hers was, haha, without a backlight. What else? Lay out a game of solitaire, doodle roses in the margins of old newspapers. Go to bed? It was too early, maybe 9. Masha was the restless type, and sitting idle felt like torture. God, people are so dependent on electricity. How boring it is to sit without power. And scary, too. She hadn't been afraid of the dark since childhood, or so she thought. But now, the small, cozy apartment her parents had bought her felt huge, foreign, and awful. The candlelight thinned the gloom, but in the corners it only seemed thicker. Masha shivered and suddenly remembered her phone. She wanted to talk to someone. To Mom, to Dad. She'd even have settled for her brother Misha, though they couldn't stand each other. Just to hear a familiar voice. Or she could call Sveta. That was an idea. Sveta could swing by with the car, and they'd go to a cafe or a club. Then Sveta could drop her at her parents' place, and Masha could spend the night there. She leapt off the couch and happily started hunting for her phone. Then she remembered. She'd left it in the bathroom. She had this habit of dragging her phone everywhere, even though there weren't any important calls to take. Setting the candle on the little table by the door, Masha dashed into the bathroom and slipped, slamming her head hard. She'd forgotten to wipe the floor after her bath, and the wet tile sent her skating. Stars burst before her eyes. She'd cracked the back of her head against the doorframe, and now sat on the floor, hissing in pain and rubbing her skull. No blood, it seemed, but a big lump was already forming. Plus, she'd landed badly on her thigh. There'd be a bruise, straightening up hurt. With effort, she stood, felt around on the washing machine for her phone, and limping, headed back to the living room. So much for dancing tonight. She eased herself onto the couch, pressed the unlock button, and groaned aloud. She barely resisted the urge to hurl the phone at the wall. After all, it wasn't the phone's fault she'd forgotten to charge it. God, could everything go wrong at once? She squeezed her eyes shut, and hot, angry tears slid down her face. From pain and from sheer frustration. Her head throbbed, her vision doubled a little. Please let it not be a concussion. That would be the perfect cap on the evening. The sharp trill of the doorbell made her jump. Her heart lurched into a frantic pounding. Sudden sounds in the dark do not calm the nerves. Carefully standing, Masha picked up the candlestick and, feeling like the heroine of a gothic novel, walked slowly toward the door. "Who is it?" Her lips were dry. Her voice came out like a mosquito's whine. There was a rustle outside the door, and then she heard the cracked voice of her neighbor, Anna Pavlovna. "Mashenka, it's Anna Pavlovna, from 48. Open up for just a minute." Masha let out a breath of relief and reached for the lock. She opened the door. Her neighbor stood on the landing, illuminated only by the candle in Masha's hand. Funny she made it here in the dark, Masha thought. Anna Pavlovna lived 2 floors down. The older woman stood very still, staring intently into Masha's eyes. Her lips stretched into a benevolent smile. "Mashenka, dear, did the power come back on?" "No, Anna Pavlovna, as you can see." The neighbor's eyes darted past Masha's shoulder. "When will it?" "I don't know. I don't have the building office's number." Anna Pavlovna nodded slowly, still smiling that ingratiating smile. Masha stared back, waiting for her to do something else. "Mashenka, can I come in?" Anna Pavlovna stepped closer to the doorway, but didn't cross the threshold. Masha flinched a little when the candlelight reflected in the older woman's eyes. For some reason, the request made her uneasy. She didn't want to let the neighbor into the apartment. They usually got along fine. Anna Pavlovna was polite, never lectured the youth, and Masha had run errands for her more than once. But now, something about her was frightening. Masha felt a twinge of shame, but she couldn't help it. The woman's usually cheerful, full face looked sagging and deflated. Her lower lip drooped a little, revealing a dark row of bottom teeth. Her hair, usually coiled neatly into a bun, hung in untidy strands. Of course, Masha knew old age isn't the time for beauty. It was evening. The neighbor looked at home, and the light was dim. But the sense of danger kept building. "Anna Pavlovna, they'll probably get the power back soon. Let me walk you to your place." The neighbor chewed her lip. "Mashenka, it's so dark. There's no power. Do you have any candles? I've got one left. I'll bring it out. Just let me in. I'll take it myself." The words chilled Masha. She'd never seen Anna Pavlovna so pushy. Why does she need to come inside? "I'll bring it right now. Please wait." Masha barely resisted the urge to slam the door in the woman's face and hobbled to the kitchen for the spare candle. When she returned, she noticed that Anna Pavlovna was standing right at the threshold, but didn't step over it. Without leaving the doorway, Masha held the candle out to her. "Should I walk you back?" "Masha, can I stay with you? Please?" The neighbor's face crumpled, as if she were about to cry. For a moment, Masha felt guilty. Maybe she really should let her in. Maybe the old woman was scared to be alone. And what was the point of sitting by herself anyway? She'd wanted something to do. They could make tea, chat, listen to those sweet old people stories about their youth. Sensing her hesitation, Anna Pavlovna edged even closer to the threshold and clutched the door jamb with her fingers. Masha's gaze dropped to the hand, and icy terror pricked her heart. Anna Pavlovna had once told her she'd worked a dangerous job. She was missing the tip of the ring finger on her right hand. Now it was there. Masha flicked a quick look to the other hand. All the fingers were whole there, too. Dizzy, she peered into the woman's face. Her mind split on one side. This was the familiar neighbor's face. On the other, she didn't recognize it at all. Anna Pavlovna stood hunched, watching from under her brows. She seemed to realize Masha had noticed something she shouldn't have. The pause stretched. Masha fought the urge to slam the door. The only thing stopping her were those fingers hooked over the jamb. The candle in Masha's hand sputtered and went out. In the next second, she heard a scraping little giggle right in front of her, a rustle of movement. She couldn't take it. She squeaked and slammed the door. Judging by the lack of impact, Anna Pavlovna had time to snatch her hand back. Sobbing, hands trembling along the walls, Masha made her way toward the kitchen, lit by the ghostly blue of the gas. Reaching the doorway, she leaned against the wall and slid to the floor, breathing in ragged bursts and smearing tears. She had no idea what she'd just seen, how to file it in her brain, or what to do next. All she felt was an animal panic that had crested and was slowly ebbing, leaving numbness in its wake. In the dead quiet, broken only by her breathing, a scratching sound began. Masha flinched and peered down the hall at the front door. The scratching turned into a gentle tapping. "Masha, let me in. Do you know when the power will be back?" The neighbor's voice, oily and sweet. "Go away." A sudden flare of anger hit her. Masha groped for a broom nearby and hurled it at the door. "I'm not letting you in!" Catching her breath, Masha stood and lit a candle. She tried to ignore the sounds and the neighbor. The old woman had probably lost her mind. And the finger. Well, anything can seem real in the dark. Back in the living room, she set the candlestick on the table and curled up on the couch. She closed her eyes, and a few minutes later, realized the noises had stopped. Looked like Anna Pavlovna had left. With a sigh of relief, Masha pulled a throw over herself and dozed off within minutes. The doorbell yanked her awake. The sharp sound sent her bolt upright, second time that evening. Her first impulse was to ignore it, to stay away from the door, but the ringing went on, jangling her nerves. With a shaking hand, she took the candlestick and approached the door. "Who is it?" Her voice was hoarse with sleep. "Mashul, it's me, Diana. Can you open up for a minute?" Hearing the voice, Masha allowed herself a small breath of relief. Diana lived in the apartment across the hall with her 2-year-old daughter, Arisha. Masha had even gone over for coffee once. "Just a sec, Diane." Fumbling a little, Masha opened the door. Diana stood in the hall with Arisha, who clung tight to her mother's hand. Masha managed a strained smile. "Hey, did you need something?" Diana leaned forward, flashing a bright smile. "Mashul, do you know if the power's back on?" The hair rose on the back of Masha's neck. Frozen, she shifted her gaze to Irina. The little girl stood with her finger in her mouth, staring at Masha without blinking. "Diana, what are you asking?" "You can see it's not," Masha stammered helplessly. Diana scooped her daughter up. Now, both of them were pinning Masha with their eyes. "Mashul, can we come in? Our microwave's dead. We need to warm up Arisha's milk." Masha's fingers iced around the doorknob. She was ready to slam the door at the slightest move. "Diana, my microwave is dead too. The power's out." "Oh, come on, Mashul. Arisha's afraid of the dark. Let us in. We'll have some tea." "It's dark here too." White-knuckled on the knob, Masha watched as Arisha pulled her finger from her mouth, perched on her mother's arms. The little girl suddenly smiled and said, plainly and clearly, "Masha, is the power back on?" Masha slammed the door and burst into tears, slumping against it. She could feel the blows through the wood, and she yelped with each one. She already understood that something horrible had happened, that whatever was going on wasn't normal and lay far beyond reason. Irina barely knew how to talk, only single words, and mangled ones at that. Only yesterday she'd called Masha Masa. And as for being surprised, well, Anna Pavlovna's finger had grown back. Compared to that, a 2-year-old speaking clearly was nothing. Diana pounded on the door for another 15 minutes, though Masha had long since lost track of time. Then the blows faded. Masha pressed her ear to the door, but never heard Diana's door close. She also wondered why no other neighbors had come out, hearing Diana hammering away like that. In such silence, it had to echo through all 9 floors. She shouldn't have thought about the other neighbors. After a few dozen minutes, Masha still on the floor by the door, the bell rang again. This time, it was the neighbor from downstairs, Sergei, the auto mechanic. Masha didn't open. He repeated in all sorts of tones, "Is the power back on? Mashka? Is it? When will it be?" And he knocked and knocked. Masha felt she was going mad. She made up her mind to get out of the apartment. Strange she hadn't thought of it earlier. She should have run the moment Anna Pavlovna left. When the pounding stopped and the neighbor seemed to have gone, Masha quietly slipped on her shearling, grabbed her bag, and stood for a while with her ear to the door. The landing was dead silent. After a few minutes, crossing herself, she opened the door. The candle still burned on the little table by the entry. She almost left it there, but realized she wouldn't be able to lock up in total darkness. Taking the candle, she stepped onto the landing. When the light fell on both flights of stairs, a scream lodged in her throat. They were all there, standing on the steps. Anna Pavlovna, Diana with Arisha, Sergei, Mikhail Petrovich from the first floor, 13-year-old Nadia with her grandmother, the tall blonde in stilettos from the second floor, the little old lady from the third, the Reviakins from the fifth, and many others whose faces were lost in the dark. All of them just stood and stared at Masha in silence. Fighting the shake in her knees, Masha edged backward toward the door. "Thank God I didn't lock it yet," flashed the desperate thought. Without turning her back on the waiting crowd, she cracked the door, slipped inside like lightning, and threw the chain across. The candle dropped from her hands and went out. In the dark, she scraped the key along the door, trying to find the lock, whimpering softly, trying not to hear the many-voiced wail that broke out the moment she slammed the door. The voices howled, moaned, screamed, sobbed, and the nightmare noise blended into one sentence. "Is the power back on?" Sobbing, Masha crawled toward the kitchen. Her legs wouldn't hold her. The roar filled her skull, pushing out all thought. The last thing she saw was the gas burners going out. Getting Arisha ready for daycare was always a monumental hassle, and this morning more than ever. The power had gone out last night, and the little girl refused to sleep. First bouncing off the walls, then crying and calling for Diana. She'd reached that age when the dark starts to scare you. Diana had hoped the lack of power would knock her out early, but the opposite happened. The circus of stories and tears went on until 1 a.m. And when mother and daughter finally fell asleep in a hug, there were only 6 hours left until wake-up. In the morning, Diana could barely get up. Rousing Arisha and feeding her breakfast proved even harder. At last, She wrestled her into a puffy snowsuit, got her boots on, and pulled a hat over her ears. Now came the hardest part, strapping Irina into the stroller. Opening the front door, Diana began to muscle the bulky stroller out onto the landing. She noticed in passing that a new candle lay on the floor by the door across the hall, where the student Masha lived, but didn't have time to wonder. Masha's door swung open, and out came the owner herself. "Hey, Mashul," Diana tossed over her shoulder, scooping Irina under the arms and settling her into the stroller. The girl fussed, bent her knees, braced her feet against the seat, and Diana didn't raise her eyes to Masha right away. Masha stood by her door, arms hanging at her sides, staring at nothing. Diana noticed how drawn she looked. Very pale face, uncombed hair. "Masha, are you okay? You look off." As if hearing her for the first time, Masha flinched. Diana saw her take a step back toward her door, and then, as if changing her mind, stop. To Diana's horror, Masha reached her hands out, groped the air, and slowly stepped forward. She felt for the railing, clutched it, and, sliding past Diana with that blind, unfocused gaze, asked the air, "Diana, is the power back on?"